Part 5. The Original Vampire. Author, Logo Busroot. Chapter 41. Chapter 41. The night is deep. The grand banquet in Bingian City finally came to an end. However, the nobles who left from the banquet had different faces. Some people are excited, some are panicked, some are expected, some are afraid. Tonight is destined to be sleepy. An only pigeon rose from Bingian City and dispersed all over the north. They will pass as shocking news: the eldest son of the Duke of St. Hilda, and the Marquis of Charles, announced that under the question of Marquis in Garcia, he announced his abandonment of his title. The title of Charles was blocked and there was no corresponding territory. The meaning of its true representative is actually the inheritance of the Duke of St. Hilda. Giving up this title means that Charles gave up his right to inherit. Of course, strictly speaking, only after the Duke of St. Hilda approved Charles's request, he was officially deprived of the Jones and completely lost the right to inherit the Duke. However, what is really intriguing, or more frightening, is that Charles actively abandoned the title under his uncle's persecution. Now that Charles will not inherit the Duke of the St. Hilda family, who will inherit it? Is the second son of the Duke, or the Duke's brother? It stands to reason that as the younger brother of the Duke, the inheritance of the Marquis of Garcia was after the three sons of the Duke, and even ranked behind the Duke's adopted girl Vera. But now, no one dares to determine who the title of the St. Hilda family will fall on. Who will fall on? Will the golden lion banner turn into a black lion? A horrible storm has quietly approached the north of the empire. Someone rejoiced, trying to take this opportunity to take advantage of the opportunity. Some people were worried and were scared by the hidden crisis. Colin quietly walked on the streets of Bingian City, thinking about how the Angra family should be in this upcoming storm. To be honest, he didn't want the north border to mess at this time. This is not because he is loyal to the Duke of St. Hilda, or have sympathy for Marquis of Charles, nor is he worried that the storm will involve Vera, but he knows that if the north border is caught in civil strife at this time, then who will be the biggest beneficiary? There is no doubt that it will be a giant. You know, the 300,000 trunks on the sky ice field have not yet withdrawn it. Maybe it is now staring at the north on the border. Once the Marquis of Garcia and the Duke of St. Hilda got up, the troll would definitely take the opportunity to go south again. The north will definitely make a charcoal. Colin does not care about the power of the superiors, but as a human, he must not be willing to see the north to become a place where the north will become a giant. But unfortunately, others are loud and cannot change the current situation. I can only send hope in the Duke of the North of the Winter City, be able to retain a trace of reason and make appropriate concessions. Colin returned to the hotel, removed the armor, and fell asleep. When I woke up, the sun was just right. Although the atmosphere in Bingian was slightly tense, there was no chaos, as if everything last night was just an illusion. After using breakfast, Colin went out for a walk, by the way. Of course, Ziobai was not willing to be walked, but Colin pulled it out. After the protest was invalid, the angry little wight drilled into the clothes of Colin and continued to make up. In fact, Collins is not really aimlessly wandering on the streets. He has a destination: the glorious church. The church of the Guanghui Church in Bingian City is not far from the west side of the Suotuo family castle. It is a high tower built with pure white rocks. Long empty. Colin is no longer as fearful to the glorious church as when he is just wearing. After all, he has already drank holy water and even advanced. In fact, when he successfully advanced, becoming a formal knight and can inspire the energy of the light, Colin already has a speculation. The vampire of this world should not be restrained by the church. As a result, he walked into the door of the church. The guards at the door looked at the gorgeous clothes and didn't stop it. In the empty prayer hall, there are no people, there are only rows of tables and chairs, and the sculpture located in the front row. Sculpture is naturally the image of the Lord of Glorious. This is a middle-aged man wearing a quality robe, with long hair shawls, holding a scepter in his right hand, and a left finger forward. The only strange thing is his face. There are no facial features above. According to the Church, there is no reason for the Lord of Glory because he can be the image of anyone: elegant nobles, poor civilians, and even low slaves. Colin looked up at the legendary god of human beings, but suddenly there was a sense of inexplicable familiarity in his heart. He thought for a long time, but couldn't figure out where this familiarity came from. "Dear knight, do I can help you?" Just as Colin's sculpture in the glorious Lord was imaginative, an old voice suddenly awakened him. "Hello, respectful pastor, please call me Clorin." The turbid eyes of the old priest flashed slightly and laughed. It turned out to be the Knight Cavaliers. "I heard your name." Colin was a little surprised. Obviously, he did not expect that he was so famous now. The old rev seemed to see Colin's doubt, and explained with a smile, "Bishop Ravi has been here before and mentioned you with me." Colin suddenly realized that he had a deep impression on the Bishop of Bishop Rywin. It is estimated that he was thinking about the pure holy water of his bottle. The stingy bishop. Colin's heart was slandered, but on the surface, it was a deep honor. "I didn't expect Bishop Ravi to remember me, it was an honor. I don't know what happened to the Colin Cavaliers here. That's it, I actually want to buy some holy water. I can save myself if I get seriously injured next time." Since the last advance, Colin has started the idea of church holy water. It is rare to be free at this moment. He naturally wants to make some holy water to drink. "That's it then, you please come with me," the old rev nodded, leading Colin to pass through the prayer hall. In fact, the church selling holy water has long been normal. Moreover, the price is extremely expensive. The church not only did not feel ashamed of this, but argued righteously the gift of the gods requires the cost. The two soon came to a hut in the back hall. The house is simple. In the house, only a bathtub-size pool is arranged in the central government. The water surface in the pool is smooth like a mirror, with a milky white holy light. This is of course the holy water, but it is diluted. Colin Cheung endured the impulse to ransack the church and handed the water sack to the old pastor. "Please help me." "Okay. Guru, Guru." The old priest quickly filled the water sack, and then returned to the clearing, the Cavaliers, a total of 30 gold coins. "Really black? You know, these holy water has been diluted, not the pure holy water that Bishop Rywin drank, the water without water." As for how many times diluted? According to Colin's understanding, the church's general approach is 1,000 times. Therefore, the true content of all the holy water in the church's holy pool in front of the church is estimated to be comparable to the small bottle concentrated in the hands of Bishop Rywin. And now the holy water of the whole water sack that Colin spent a huge sum of money is estimated to be diluted from 1 or 2 drops of pure holy water. Colin was painful for a while, but had to pay 30 gold coins into the hands of the old priest. "Try it first." Colin said goodbye to the old pastor and left this black shop. This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Logo Busroot. Chapter 42. Chapter 42 from the Duke's Army Order. Boom. Strolling on the streets of Benjian City, Colin touched his stomach and was full. He just came out of the church and drank a full water. It was just that the advancement in expectations did not come. Even the condition of the body's fever did not appear. Colin thought, it is estimated that the results will not be so fast, and there must be some reaction time, so he will wait patiently. This class has waited from the early morning until the sunset. Still not responding. At noon, he felt a slight heating of his body. But extremely not obvious. Could it be that the dose is too small? Colin is a little puzzled. But at the same time, there are some helplessness. Last time, Bishop Ravi still saw a whole bottle of pure holy water to rescue him with a whole bottle of pure holy water. Now if he wants to make some holy water, he can only buy money. But thinking of the expensive price, Colin hurt a while. I am afraid that the Angle family is enough to buy the pool of holy water in the Bingian city church. But with those diluted holy water, I am afraid that he is not enough to promote the third tier. After depression, Colin came to the small tavern next to the hotel, ordered a glass of dear blood wine to borrow wine to dispel sorrow. The night was shrouded in Bingian city again. Colin's hearing became more sensitive at night. So, after drinking a slightly sloppy Colin, he began to sit idle in the tavern, at the same time wearing various gossip. After listening to it for a while, Colin found that the most discussion was that the Marquis of Garcia was forced to give up the title at the banquet last night. Moreover, most people believe that the Marquis of Garcia is very appropriate. Marquis Charles must pay the price for the previous defeat. However, not many people realized how it would have a huge impact on the situation in the north. This is not surprising. After all, it is just a group of unknown civilians. What politics do they know? Many people do not really support the Marquis of Garcia, they just want to see Marquis Charles unlucky. Just as the arrest of corrupt officials can always lead to cheers from the masses, the tragic encounters of the superior person can always make the subordinates get some psychological balance. As for whether the superior is really sin, it is a secondary. In addition to the unlucky Marquis of Charles, the other person who discussed the most in the tavern was Miss Willa, the daughter-in-law who made his debut in the north. Especially when the night is deeper and the wine is more drinking, Marquis of Jew Charles is gradually being forgotten by everyone, and the name of Miss Villa has become the focus of new discussion. Some people vowed to describe Vera's appearance, as if he had seen it with his own eyes. Some people also mysteriously talked about Villa's true identity as a mage, which immediately caused a lot of amazing. Colin glanced at the guy who revealed the identity of Master Ra, and found that the other party was a little familiar. It is estimated that it was a person who had experienced the escape together. He didn't care. Among the people who fled together, Colin now just wanted to find the big filial son Sal, and then gave the other person a profound lesson. However, some of the remarks about Villa in the tavern attracted Colin's attention. Because many people are guessing Vera's biological parents. Colin suddenly discovered that Vera's biological parents seemed to be a mystery. But now that she can be selected by the Duke of St. Hilda as an adopted daughter, the biological parents of Vera are definitely a nobleman. Who will it be? Just when Colin was in contemplation, he suddenly heard some drunk men, and was using wine. He was very disrespectful to Miss Villa in his words, and some remarks were unbearable. When Colin heard the fire, he was preparing to be at the expense of his own price and violently hit the fool, but he found that someone actually started to do it. As a result, the tavern was instantly lively. Fighting, onlookers, applauding. Pretending to persuade the shelter, in fact, it was intentionally encouraged, but the sideways was accidentally injured. The whole scene was chaotic, full of hormones that had nowhere to vent. Only the boss of the tavern cried and tried to discourage the beating. However, these drunk men who evoked fire by Vera were evoked. Only through this most primitive physical conflict can they vent their anxiety in their hearts. Colin ordered a glass of dear blood wine and sat in the corner to see it. Finally, the fierce fighting attracted a team of defense. In front of the all-armed soldiers, these drunk men suddenly lost their temper and were subdued one by one, squatting on the ground for interrogation. According to the punishment of private fighting in the city, these people have to pay a fine of 30 copper coins, otherwise they will go to the prison to squat for 10 days. Some people have paid fines honestly. However, there are also some poor light eggs that can't even get 30 copper coins, and the old fritters who are willing to go to the prison. The latter two were naturally taken away by the city defense army. The tavern was much spacious instantly. But it is a lot boring. After drinking the wine in the glass, I was about to go back to sleep, but found that an acquaintance came in. British Cavaliers. That's right, the coming person was the Sanhilda family knight who had fled with Colin. The British cavaliers followed the voice and also found Colin. His indifferent face was rare with a smile, and then walked over and sat next to Colin. Your right hand, Colin noticed the other side's empty right arm. After the Battle of the River, Colin was unconscious, and the Bliss Knight accepted the order of the Marquis of Garcia and left before the wake-up. Therefore, Collins did not know that Bliss had become a lone hero. Nothing Benley he was injured in the first battle, the Cavaliers of Bliss said lightly. Seeing that the other party didn't want to say more, Colin was not entangled on this topic, and asked, "What do you want to drink? I invite you." "What are you drinking?" "Dear blood wine." The Bliss Knight glanced at Colin in amazement, and it seemed that it was unexpected that the heir who looked like a gentle baron was so heavy. "Then give me a cup." Colin smiled slightly, and helped Bride a glass of dear blood wine. After Benley where did you go? Winter City. Colin's eyes shrank slightly and asked quickly, "What to do?" But he seemed to realize something again, and quickly added, "If it is not convenient to say." "Nothing inconvenient." After Benley River World War, the Bliss Knight seemed to have recognized Colin, and there was a somewhat urgent posture. "I worshipped the Marquis of Garcia and went to the Winter City to ask the Duke to get the military order," Colin said secretly. Then he asked, "So, what military order did you bring back?" This time, the Bliss Knight hesitated a bit, but still said, "The Duke ordered the Marquis of Garcia to coach the Black Cavalry to pursue the giant devil army who was evacuating the north." This chapter is finished. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Original Vampire. Author, Ludo Busroot. Chapter 43. Chapter 43, Vera's Request. The news about the Duke's military order soon spread through Bingian City. A joyful scene in the city. Everyone believes that as long as the Marquis of Garcia personally goes out, the battle of revenge is stable. Of course, it is humble to say that Shiganji's stability is humble. After all, the Black Army has failed since the formal army. But Collins was not very happy. Moreover, as time passed, his concerns gradually deepened. Because the Marquis of Garcia does not seem to have an intention to attract troops north at all. Moreover, the private forces of the lords in the north are constantly gathered to Bingian City, almost turning the entire city into a huge barracks. As the increasing number of soldiers poured into Bingian City, the people's confidence in the city became increasingly rising. In their opinion, this should be the call of the lords in response to Marquis in Garcia, preparing to collect horses, and cooperate with the Black Cavalry to kill the Sky Ice Field. However, Colin, who knows the original text of the Duke Army, is not so optimistic. Because he clearly remembered that the Bliss Knight told him himself that the Duke's order was to let the Marquis of Garcia lead the Black Army to pursue the Troll, but he never let him call the private army of all lords to attack together. Does the Marquis of Garcia lie to the Duke's military order? What do he want to do so many troops do? Is it really planning to attack the Sky Ice Field? Still, Colin's unknown premonition is getting worse. After 10 days in a row, the Black Cavalry still had no movement, but the private army of the lords in the north became more and more. Seeing the situation is about to slide to the most dangerous abyss. Bingian City is almost becoming a huge gunpowder barrel. Colin has already planned to open up. But at this time, he suddenly received news from Vera. "Miss Willa wants to see me." "Yes." Under the glance of the maid, Colin hesitated for a long time, and finally sighed, "Okay, bring the way." The maid led all the way into the castle of the Suduo family and came to a garden in the backyard of the castle. In the garden, Colin saw Vera's figure at a glance. "I haven't seen it for a long time, this female mage has been reduced a lot." It seems that she is also worried about the current tense situation. Colin, come here. Under the shine in the early morning, Vera looked calm and quiet. She did not wear noble costumes today, but she often dressed up. The upper body is a thin white shirt, the lower body is a black short skirt, and the left chest of the shirt and the skirt corners of the skirt are embroidered with a small rose flower. However, even such a simple dress, it is difficult to hide its beautiful appearance. When Colin came in, she was interested in taking care of a plant in the garden. After seeing Colin, Vera smiled and beckoned, as if the girl was greeted her first lover. I don't know why, as soon as I saw Vera, Colin's originally anxious heart suddenly settled. He walked over and bowed to salute. "Good morning, Miss Villa." "Good morning, Clorin. Have you used breakfast?" "Have eaten." "What do you want to drink?" "Cafe." Vera motioned to the maid to bring a cup of coffee. Collins took a grabbing and took a sip. After the strong bitter entrance, it turned into a faint back, with some refreshing fragrance. "It's not bad." Vera smiled slightly after seeing the expression of Colin's enjoyment. "This is the collection of the Suduo family." "Haha, then I still take your light." Colin was holding the coffee cup, squatted beside Vera, and asked the plant in front of her and asked, "Is this your flower?" "This is not a flower." Vera shook his head. "This is a twin grass, a plant that is extremely precious for the mage. Moreover, it is not me, but it was given to me by Cain Cable." "Well, it seems that the Concavaliers are so generous." "It is given coffee again, and it is a precious plant. This Con will not empty the old base of the Suduo family in order to please Vera, right?" Although this man is praised, Colin has been scolded in his heart. Alas, lick the dog. This kind of licking dogs can be described as the public enemy of all men, because their behavior has raised the psychological expectations of girls and greatly damaged the interests of other men. For example, Colin, he doesn't know what gift to give Vera, and he almost couldn't take it out, but it seemed better, it seemed that he couldn't afford it. Verako didn't know the psychological activity of the man next to her. She stared at the twin grass in front of her, and suddenly sighed, leisurely. "Do you know, this twin grass looks like one, but it is actually a pair. Since birth, the branches of the twin grass have been wrapped together and supported each other, but they are entangled too tightly, but they have tortured each other. Do you see that drop of pale green juice? That is, their branches are wrapped and squeezed with each other." During speaking, the drop of juice gradually took shape and suddenly fell. It dripped in the soil but did not exude, but turned into an amber-like green gem. Vera carefully picked up the green gemstone and explained, "This is the crystallization of the twin grass juice, which is an extremely precious cast material, but this is actually the blood and tears flowing when they are tortured." For the first time, Colin had seen this magical plant, and he couldn't help but look at it a few more. But immediately, he realized that Vera's words seemed to be pointing out. Duke of St. Hilda and Marquis of Garcia, the relationship between the two brothers, is also supported by this twin grass, but confront each other? Wyra put the crystallization of the twin grass and turned around and said to Colin, "You should know that my father is a little stiff with his uncle now, so can you help me persuade them?" "Your father and your uncle are more than a little stiff now." Colin was speechless for a while, but on the surface, I was comforted. "Don't worry, there will be nothing. I am an outsider, not very advised. Have you tried to persuade yourself?" "Of course persuaded." Vera looked at his cheeks and seemed a little angry. "But the uncle ignored my advice at all. As for my father, I have written 2 letters to send it to the Winter City, but they are both sheesh and high." Khalil is silent. Vera was a little anxious. "Do you know, recently, I got the news that the Golden Lion Corps has begun to gather, and it seems to mean to march to Benjian City." Colin was shocked. The Golden Lion Legion is the army of the St. Hilda family. If this army is also mobilized, it will not indicate that the Duke of St. Hilda has made a never compromise, and even prepared for jade burning. Is it? Colin, you can always come up with a way in despair this time, you must also help me. Faced with Vera's soft request, Colin couldn't say anything at all. At this time, he finally understood what it means, red face. Okay, I'm going to see the Marquis of Garcia with you. Thank you, Colin. Don't be too happy to be too early, I can only try my best to persuade. As for success, whether success or not, I will be grateful. This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Lugo Busroot. Chapter 44. Chapter 44, Hunting. Marquis is not in the castle. Yes, Master Marquis went to the suburbs to hunt. The two of Colin and Vera were empty, and the Marquis of Garcia was not in the castle at this moment. Then, can you please take us to see him? Of course, this is my honor. Facing Vera's request, the Jew guard will certainly not refuse. As a result, Colin followed the church guard to the horse to lead the horse, while Vera went back to change his clothes that facilitated horse riding. When he came to Mayan, Colin met an old acquaintance. Good morning, Cindy. Colin greeted with a smile on his face, and he scolded crazy women in his heart. Zendaya seemed to have just returned from the outside. After seeing Colin, she was stunned, and then she asked uncomfortably, "What are you doing here?" "Anyway, I don't come to you." When Colin saw this crazy woman so rude, he didn't rush back. Cynthia stared at her eyes, and her right hand touched the sword on her waist. Colin was startled. This woman was so crazy. "If you don't agree with this, you have to start again?" The church guard next to it was also scared by the two. For a while, he did not figure out the situation at all, but when you see the situation, you must be out of control. He quickly stood up and explained. "Cindy, Knight, Colin Knight was invited by Miss Wyra to come to the castle. Now he is going to go to the suburbs to meet the Marquis of Garcia." Originally, Zendaya saw a guard who dared to intervene in front of her and was ready to scold, but when she heard the name of Marquis of Garcia, she saw the black lion badge on the other's chest armor, and she suddenly stunned. It depends on the owner. The guards of Marquis in Garcia are not ordinary guards. Although Zendaya is crazy, she is not stupid. When Colin saw Seema, he was about to ridicule a few words, but after seeing the servant who gave Zendaya a horse, he was happy. Another old acquaintance. Desiazi, Sal. "Cynthia Knight, this servant who gives you a horse looks good, is it sold?" "Don't sell it." Zendaya didn't think about it, and he refused. Colin did not surprise Zendaya's answer, but said in a whole time, "Don't rush to refuse, don't you plan to listen to my bid?" Cynthia's sword eyebrows raised slightly, hesitated a little, and nodded, "Then you talk about it?" Hearing this sentence, the corner of Colin's mouth was raised immediately. Hook up. Although Sal has kept his head down, Colin still keenly noticed the other person's tight punches, and his instant rigid body. He is a poisonous snake. This is the evaluation of the Bliss Knight. Colin agrees very much. A person who can betray his father, what can't you betray? Seema thought he had given Saul to protect Dade. However, Colin knows that as long as Cynthia flows a trace of wanting to sell Saul to Colin, then the seeds of hatred will be buried in Sal's heart. 10 gold coins, Colin said casually. Zendaya sneered, "Colin Knight, is your Angra family so embarrassed? I want to buy a servant at this price. I suggest you go to the slave market in the west of the city." To be honest, the price of 10 gold coins is no longer low. Of course, it is not high. In fact, as long as Colin's bid is far beyond the value of Sal, Cynthia will definitely not agree to the disgusting. Collins did not want Zendaya to agree. He only needs to ask the other party. The seeds of hatred have been planted, and they are waiting for their roots to germinate. Hearing Seema's rejection of Colin, Sal's body was immediately relaxed, but as Colin expected that Sal's resentment in Zendaya had been deeply buried. At this time, Sal suddenly remembered some of his father's words. Don't walk too close to the nobles. We are cow and sheep, they are tiger and leopard. We eat grass, they eat meat. Eat our meat. For his father, Sal has never been able to look at it. He feels that the other party is too conservative, too timid, and does not have enough aggressiveness and adventure spirit. But Sal agrees with the above words. These nobles have never regard civilians as the same creature, nor have they never care about their life and death. However, Sal did not fully agree with his father's words. In Sal's view, he may not be destined to eat grass for a lifetime. He also wants to eat meat too. Eat noble meat. Nympho. Colin did not expect that what he buried in Sal's heart was not just a resentment for Zendaya, but also the resentment of the entire noble class. This resentment is gathered bit by bit, and one day, it will become a tide that sweeps the entire northern border. Nympho. After Cynthia left Sal, Colin waited for a long time, and Vera was late. No way, women change clothes, and they are always slow. Moreover, this speed is generally inversely proportional to its beauty. Of course, when seeing Vera after changing the installation, Colin still felt that it was worthwhile no matter how long it was. I saw that she changed a purple chiffon shirt with a white troops on the outside. The tight horse pants outlined a pair of round and straight long legs, firmly attracting the attention of a certain LSP. It seemed to notice Colin's gaze, and Vera's little face was a little blushed. Let's set off, Colin. Good. The three turned around and went all the way to the outskirts. In the early morning of the spring, the sun was bright. Even if Colin is now a bit disgusted with the blood, it has to admit that this is a wonderful morning. It is suitable for Mayuchun. Unfortunately, the atmosphere is not right. The current tense situation made Colin and Vera have no intention of talking, only galloping all the way. Under the guidance of the church guard, the three gradually approached the camp of the Black Cavalry outside the city. The strong killing air from the face made Colin couldn't care about the orthodontic pose of villa riding. The situation seems a bit wrong. Don't you just Hunter, how can you make such murderousness? Colin frowned, trying to think about how to persuade the Marquis of Garcia later. To be honest, he doesn't have much confidence. In his opinion, since Ja of Garcia who forced Marquis to give up the title that night, things have lost their room for turning. To be honest, Colin has always felt that the Marquis of Garcia has been dealt with very clever. Looking at the Count Uman, first launching the case Yudo's puppet to attract firepower, and then through the name of the round field, it actually ended in the Marquis of Lagzia. With his own purpose, he did not let himself be involved in the vortex too much. The entire operation is extremely smooth and free. This is the quality and means of old politicians. And the Marquis of Garcia. This military talent who can crowd the north seems to be politically naive. Just as the Colin thoughts, the three had already come to the Black Camp and saw Marquis in Garcia. Uncle. Master Marquis. The Marquis of Garcia nodded towards the two, and it didn't seem to be surprised at their arrival. Uncle, where are you going to hunt? Vera looked at the Black Army, who was ready for the whole army, and had some drums in his heart. Colin's mood at this time had sank into the bottom. Although I haven't started persuading, I also persuaded a fart to see the Black Cavalry. This is all ready to start. In the eyes of Colin's despair, the Marquis of Garcia lifted the whip, which refers to the north. The sky ice field. Kang, the sky, ice field. Yes, the Marquis of Garcia smiled slightly and said, I'm ready, hunt the sky ice field. Vera was still stupid, but Colin had reacted. I was deceived. The whole north was deceived. No, not only the north, I am afraid that even the giants have been deceived. Marquis in Garcia deliberately created the tension between the Dukes of St. Hilda, I am afraid to confuse the enemy. Let everyone think that the Black Army will cause chaos in the north. However, from the beginning to the end of the Marquis of Garcia, there is only one goal giant. Colin thought that he was still in Politicia's low energy in the stainlessness of the Marquis of Caixa. Now it seems that the other party is simply acting. I was deceived from beginning to end like a fool. The Night Cavaliers. The Marquis of Garcia suddenly turned to Colin. Someone told me that you are born with the battlefield. Can you dare to hunt the ice field with me? Colin only felt a bloody rush into his head, as if it was a trace of consciousness in his predecessor. It also seemed to be out of expectations of his own unwillingness to see the northern border with charcoal. It seemed to be happy for Villa's embarrassment between her father and uncle. In short, the image of Marquis in Garcia was suddenly tall in the eyes of Colin. No wonder he worshipped him so much. The gods of the north, the guardians of the human race, all the idols of all young people in the north. How can such a character be trapped in the inner bucket vortex that scams? His sharp sword refers to that there is always only one direction, the sky ice field. Thinking of this, Colin only felt relieved. At the same time, he also felt good about the commander of the Black Banner. Immediately responded, "Why not dare?" The Marquis of Garcia laughed, whipped out, ordered. Express. The 50,000 iron riding seems to be a dark tide covering the sky, rolling north. This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Logo Busroot. Chapter 45. Chapter 45. Originally, Colin thought that the north of the glorious empire was cold enough. But now he discovered that compared with the sky ice field, the north is completely a big warm house. It's almost the end of May. If in the north, there will be some summer feelings. But in the sky ice field, it was snowing. No wonder when the north border had absolutely upper hand before, he did not continue to expand the territory north. This kind of cold place is really unwilling to come. In the whistling north wind, the snowy snowfall soon dyed the sky and the earth into a vest. The 50,000 Black Corporation, like a turbulent dark tide, is galloping north in heavy snow. Horseshoe stepped on the ground, shattered the snow, and turned out of the hard soil. The rumbling horseshoe sound, mixed with the sound of armor collision, weaving a murderous tough melody under the accompaniment of the wind. It has been more than half a month since Benjian City, but no giant army has been encountered along the way. This is not surprising. When the troll began to withdraw the army, the Black Army chased slowly, and it was still delayed in Benjian City for so long. However, the giant devil has gained a lot in the northern siege, and he must not go fast with these plunders property. According to the current speed of the Black Army, Colin estimates that if there is no wrong direction, these days should be able to catch up with the tail of the giant divine army. The Marquis of Garcia has obviously realized this. In recent days, the number of whistle riders who have released the investigation have increased significantly. But the sky is still too big. The 300,000 troops of the troll looked a lot, but they were thrown to this vast ice field, but it seemed like a drop in the sea. Moreover, under such snowy snow, the traces left by March will soon be buried. It is basically a dream to follow the footprint tracking. Therefore, the first difficulty of this chase battle was to find the trace of the Trunzer on the vast ice field. This needs to be extremely familiar with the geography of this ice field, and it is also very clear about the possible retreat route of the troll. Anyway, Colin was blind. He has never been so deeply rooted in the sky, and he almost knows here. Fortunately, there is a thick leg next to him, Marquis of Garcia. This is the real Iceland god of war. Yes, this title was given by the troll. It is enough to give the enemy to the title of Kasha on the battlefield. With such a cattle beside him, of course, Colin will not waste such a great opportunity. Adhering to the principle of asking if you do understand, Colin asked from time to ask the church in Garcia to ask Dong and the West. The Marquis of Garcia actually answered one by one every time. So patient, not to mention Colin, that is, some of the senior generals in the Black Army are very hot. Some guys are even secretly inquiring, is Collins illegitimate child of the Marquis of Garcia? Is there a lover of Uncle? Vera hid her little face deep in the fox fur shawl, only showing a pair of puzzled big eyes. Yes, Khalil's gossip breath, I know that Master Marquis has never got married, but he has no lover. Yes, I was always watching by those black club generals with a strange look, and Colin actually gradually began to doubt his life. No, Vera shook her head. As far as I know, my uncle seems to have never showed excessive affection to any lady. Moreover, for so many years, I have never heard of relevant rumors. Feeling, uncle is like a bitter practitioner. Okay, Colin was a little disappointed. Originally, he thought that there was a bizarre life in this protagonist who came through. There is a cattle person like a Marquis of Garcia as a father, and then a cattle mother who is an elf princess. Suddenly, a masked grandfather hung up, and then left him a country to inherit inheritance. Cough, the whistling cold wind was poured into Colin's mouth and interrupted his daydream. At this time, he suddenly realized that the Marquis of Garcia had no children. Moreover, if it is what Vera said, the Marquis lives a lifelike life, then he may not have a son-in-law in the future. So, who should he inherit? Is it necessary to find an adopted son, female? This is a possibility. But there is another possibility. Because Colin suddenly realized that he might have guessed what the foundation of trust between Marquis and Duke of Garcia. He has always been very puzzled before, why did the two brothers dare to play this show? You know, in that situation at that time, everyone thought that the two brothers were really going to do it. But who knows, in the end it was a shot. Such a tacit understanding, such trust, makes it difficult to believe that it will appear on this pair of brothers. Because, if the Marquis of Garcia really intends to make a master in the north, he has no need to lead the Black Cavalry into the sky. At that time, the Golden Lion Legion was severely damaged, and the lords in the north were dissatisfied with the Duke of St. Hilda because of the chores of Marquis in Charles. When I was in Bengian City, as long as the Marquis of Garcia went south, it could easily attack the Winter City. He has this ability. Duke of St. Hilda certainly knows that his brother has this ability. So, isn't he afraid that his younger brother will be true? Unless the Marquis of Garcia gave him a promise. Of course, this promise is definitely not in words. It is substantial and difficult to regret. Never, perhaps, the promise of the Marquis of Garcia to his brother. Without the descendants' inheritance, what else do you want to compete? This may be the basis for their trust. Just when Colin thought about it, there was a whistle back to the news found a trace of the Trunzer in front of it. Finally caught up? Colin obviously felt that the soldiers suddenly became excited. These soldiers who traveled thousands of miles in the snow and snow did not have a trace of slackness at this moment, none of them shrank. This is the Black Army, the first strong army in the north. However, the military command of the Marquis of Garcia came from, but ordered that the entire army would stop and camp on the spot. This is normal. After all, it is impossible to rush up as soon as the enemy traces are found. That's not a marching war, it is called Mang. A calm general will make further decisions after understanding the enemy in detail. Colin followed the Marquis of Garcia a few kilometers and came to the place where the whistle found the enemy. He looked closely at the faint traces of the snow and judged. It seems that this should be the main force of the troll, and it has not been more than a day or two just in the past. In this time, Khalil's ears are dazzled and asked for advice, and they have mastered a lot of icefield tracking skills. The Marquis of Garcia nodded and recognized the judgment of Colin, and then asked, "Then do you think, should we continue to catch up?" "Why not?" Colin was a little puzzled. "They trembled for thousands of miles, isn't it just for this?" But the Marquis of Garcia shook his head. "No, this is not our goal. This chapter is finished. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Original Vampire. Author, Lugo Busroot. Chapter 46. Chapter 46 Earl Dawn. When the night fell, heavy snow finally stopped. But this does not mean that the most difficult time has passed. In fact, it is not cold when it is snowing, and it is really terrible after snow. Under the command of the Marquis of Garcia, the Black Army camped on the spot and gave birth to a bonfire. If you do bake the fire, eat some hot, I am afraid that this army will have non-combat reduction. Colin did not squeeze the camp, but shrank under the horse's stomach, baking on fire alone. In fact, the camp is not much warmer than under the horse's belly, and a person is more comfortable. At least, he will not be seen by others. Blood is a fox blood, and an unlucky snow fox he caught before. Of course, while drinking blood, Colin also took out a few bites of hard meat, so as not to let people find that they do not eat normal food. While eating and drinking, he thought about what Chweggio said before. Colin didn't understand much at the time, but the Marquis did not explain in detail. Colin didn't ask, after all, he couldn't ask everything, and it would seem a bit stupid. That's right, Colin has been herself with the stat-ians of the Marquis of Garcia. When he thought about the real intention of Marquis in Garcia, a figure came together. Do you want to have some wine? With the light of the fire, Colin saw the coming clearly. It is Earl Dadaman. Of course, Colin took the wine sack from Earl Dowson and poured a big mouth. After a sip, from the throat to the stomach, it seemed to be on fire, and the taste, the whole person was spiritual. Shuang, good wine. Earl Dawn laughed and proudly said, of course, our dwarf's liquor dare not say that it is the best of the empire, but it is definitely the most powerful, especially suitable for drinking in this damn weather. Compared with the 5 major races in this world, dwarfs are not a big force. They are distributed all over the glorious empire, and the total number of people is about 1 million. Because of the lack of strength, the dwarves have always hugged the thighs of the human race tightly, and they were self-proclaimed by the vassals of the human race. There are even some rumors that dwarfs are actually human subcanis. However, this statement did not get much recognition. Because dwarves cannot be a knight by receiving the baptism of church pastors like humans. And the cavaliers are the exclusive occupation of the human race. Although the dwarves have always claimed to be the Lord of Glory, in order to better integrate human beings, it is clear that the Lord of Glorious has not given his glory to these dwarves. As a result, the soldiers of the Rotten Street became the only choice for dwarves. This inherent potential profession makes the dwarf cannot produce real strong. Therefore, this is not a race famous for force. However, they are good at forging and brewing. Especially forging, this skill makes dwarfs very popular in the logistics department of the army. However, the military skills of the logistics department are definitely not as good as the soldiers who fight on the front line. Therefore, few dwarves can rely on military merits to become nobles. Not to mention the big nobles like the Count. Therefore, the Count Dowson was particularly conspicuous. And more importantly, his post-tone is sealed by the Marquis of Garcia. The foundation of the Marquis of Garcia is in the Black Army, and his Feng Chen is basically a senior general in the army. But he sealed the port in his name to a dwarf. Moreover, this is the only earl of him. This is unusual. The Black Army is a pure cavalry army, and the height of the dwarf limits the possibility of becoming an excellent cavalry. Moreover, according to the understanding of Colin, although Count Dowson is a soldier, the level is not high. Therefore, Count Dow's military merit obviously does not rely on force. In the Black Army, Count Dowson seems to be the shadow of Marquis in Garcia. The Marquis of Garcia is the soul of this army and the banner on the bright side. Earl Matson is the big housekeeper behind the scenes to maintain the logistics support and tedious daily affairs of this army. Although the work of Count Dowson was mostly unknown, he could be named the Count of Garcia Marquis books as a dwarf, which can be seen that his importance to the Black Army. Therefore, after the Colin entered the Black Army, in addition to the Marquis of Garcia, the person he was most concerned about was Earl Musin. And because of the different eyes of the Marquis of Garcia, Count Dowson, the shadow of the Marquis, was also very enthusiastic about Colin. As a result, the two gradually became familiar. At this moment, Colin and Earl Dowson shrank under the belly of the horse, drinking one by one, and at the same time, the mountains of the South China Sea rumored the mountains. Earl Dowson followed the Hedar Jaws to fight for half a lifetime. All kinds of wind and waves have experienced, and it has always been disadvantaged. But he did not expect that this time the boy with the Colin snatched the limelight. Colin directly told the various myths in another world to the Count Dowson, and bluffed the dwarf. When Count Datamai asked him where he seemed to be, Colin said that he was a passing bard poet in the town of Grey Castle when he was a child. Earl Musin could not verify, so he had to continue to listen to Clorin. After a passing hublot, Colin was smooth. "I understand now why the Marquis values you so much." "Well, why?" "Because you can blow." Colin laughed, and of course he knew that the other party was joking. However, he looked moved and asked, "Earl, Master, do you really think that the Marquis is because this value me?" Seeing the solemn face of Colin, the Count Dowson knew that the other party was really asking, so he put away a joke face and asked, "What do you think is because?" Colin poured a sip of wine and thought about it for a while. "Either because of the battle that ran to the river before, or because of Miss Vera, but I think these two seem to let Lord Marquis take care of me like this." "Really?" "You know, the Angra family is the Fenhilders Duke, so Colin is an outsider at all for the Black Trojan system that is completely affiliated with the Marquis of Garcia." Regardless of how well Colin revealed how well he had a good war talent on the way to escape, and no matter how much Miss Willa had a good opinion of him, he would not let the Marquis of Garcia, the northern military god, care about him as an outsider. Earl Musin nodded, then shook his head again, and said mysteriously, "Hey, you will know in the future." Colin was depressed for a while, and the appetite's appetite was most annoying. Before he continued to ask, Count Dowson had already shifted the topic hard. "Do you know why Master Marquis does not continue to track the previous giant army? This is actually a question that Khalil has been thinking just now. And I have some thoughts." At this moment, when I saw Countess Daosin asked, I replied, "I think that the big army in front should not be our best goal of attack." "So what is it?" "Wolf cavalry." Collins voted a sip of alcohol and said confidently, "In this flat and wide Iceland terrain, only cavalry can deal with cavalry, therefore, that giant wolf cavalry is the only threat of the Black Army as long as you find and give priority to annihilating them, the remaining troops are waiting the lamb of the slaughter." Earl Musin patted his hands and praised him with a smile. "The British Cavaliers are right, you are really suitable for the battlefield." This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Ludo Busrud. Chapter 47. Chapter 47 Tracking. In the following days, the movement of the Black Army verified the guess of Colin. Under the command of the Marquis of Garcia, they kept a certain distance with the main force of the Troll, while constantly searching for the trace of the Wolf Cavalry. Now that the Troll's main force is here, the Wolf Cavalry must also swim nearby. The most important task of the Black Army is before the other party discovered themselves. On the third day, the Black Army discovered the main trace of the Wolf Cavalry. The situation at the time was actually quite thrilling. Because when the Black Cavalry's whistle discovered the trace of this Wolf Cavalry, the two armies were only more than 30 miles apart. This distance is a very dangerous distance for the cavalry. If you fight normally, this should be the edge of the scope of the whistle. It can be said that the two sides almost passed by. It is not blamed that this wolf cavalry was careless and could not find the black club close at hand. Because they didn't realize that they were still in a chase behind them. This is the intention of the jaw of Garcia's marquis. The troll was completely paralyzed. In their opinion, the Black Army should still be in Bengian City at this moment. Maybe it has been fought with the Golden Legion of the Duke of St. Hilda. Even if the giant devil really has an eyeliner in Bengian City, he has no time to pass the motion of the Black Army to the giant army in time. Because the fastest way of communication in the world is a pigeon. However, the pigeon can only find the way home according to the changes in the magnetic field, so it can only be used to convey messages to a fixed place, and the giants in the operation must not be able to receive the pigeons. The second way to pass the speed is that the horses are courier. But the Black Army itself is a cavalry, and the speed will not be slower than those who ride a letter. What's more, they will also pay attention to the situation behind them, and they will not make a guy who send a letter leak. Therefore, the Marquis of Garcia actually used the time difference between obtaining information. First, he played a show with his brother, and then with the amazing mobility of the Black Army, he was caught off guard. However, although the enemy was in front of him and there was no defense, the Marquis of Garcia did not immediately launch an attack. Instead, he ordered the army to catch up along the route where the wolf cavalry walked. As an excellent general, sufficient patience is a necessary basic quality. In the following time, the two sides kept a distance of 30 or 40 miles until the night fell. The wolf cavalry stopped to camp and rest, and the Black Army stopped moving almost at the same time. The north wind screamed, and the heavy snow was raised again. This night, the Black Cavalry's camp was banned from fire. Without a bonfire, Colin finally couldn't hold the cold wind outside, and drilled into the camp of Count Dowson. Earl Dawn was very enthusiastic. He took out the spirits again and talked with Colin. I don't know if the enemy is following, and the atmosphere in the camp is a little nervous and anxious. Of course, this is not to say that the fighters of the Black Army are scared. This kind of tension is a natural reaction, indicating that the warriors' alertness has been raised. The anxiety represents the urgent mood they can't wait to start killing. Such 100 wins have completely eliminated the emotions of fear of war. Tonight, Count Dowson and Colin did not talk too long. They also knew that the war was right, and he fell asleep early in order to raise his essence. Although it was the count of the counts, 7 or 8 people were crowded inside, all of which were the courses of the count. In order to maintain maneuverability, the heavy weight of the tent must be able to bring less with less. Even the Earl can only temporarily squeeze with the people temporarily. The entire army is eligible to enjoy a camp, which is the Marquis and Miss Villa. Colin did not dare to go to the camps of the two people. Although he really wants to go to the camp after drilling. In fact, Count Dowson's camp accounts are already good, and those ordinary soldiers can even squeeze 20 or 30 big men in the camp. There are so many men in a tent, and the taste is inevitably a little smoky, and the snoring sounds are one after another, but for a day, Colin, who is about to frozen, can't care about these, and almost falls to bed. But before he slept enough, he was awakened by Count Dowson. What's going on? After getting up, Colin found that it had just passed in the middle of the night, and it was a little unhappy. Marquis military order, after an hourglass, the whole army set off. I heard that it was a March military order, and the Colin, who had already got up, could only get up honestly. The voices of the soldiers wake up the soldiers in other camps. However, the means of these officers are not so gentle, and they use their feet directly. Mixing the book, sleeping so dead, I have not noticed all of them in for so long. What about your alertness? Ah, don't kick, I get up. Nympho. After the brief chaos, the Black Army gathered quickly, and then followed the trace of the wolf cavalry. Is this ready to attack at night? Colin asked, beside Earl Dowson and whispered. "Night attack." Earl Dowson looked at Colin with a strange eyes, and then realized that the other party was young after all, and he did not have much experience in leading his troops, so he explained patiently. After the explanation of Count Dowson, Colin woke up and was deceived by those unscrupulous novels. Don't look at the drama of the running camp in the middle of the night, but in reality, few generals dare to do so. Even if it really wants to attack the night, it is generally the attack of small-scale troops. The upper-scale army will not fight at night. The reason is simple, and the risk of night warfare is too great. It is really impossible to hit the enemy by the night, but it is also easy to fall into a chaotic battle because of factors such as poor military commands. One accident is the result of both defeats. For the cavalry, the night war is even more impossible. Because the night's restrictions are more restricted. Let's talk about the terrain. Don't look at the sky. Ice field is a large plain with flat terrain. But this flatness is also relative. No matter how flat the terrain is, it is inevitable that there will be no less. These small grooves are not a problem at all during the day, and war horses can pass by. But at night, it is extremely fatal. If you are not careful, you have a big joke. Therefore, for the cavalry army, holding a torch or a slow marching through the moonlight is barely, but if you want to launch a charge, it is the brain into the water. The Marquis of Garcia certainly does not make such low-level mistakes. So at this moment, his order was just to let the Black Army take advantage of the night to be careful to get closer to the Wolf cavalry camp, instead of attacking the attack in the darkness. Don't blame Colin to understand this. Although he did follow Baron Angra on the battlefield, the army of the Angra family could not be established. The expensive arms such as cavalry can't afford to raise ordinary nobles. Therefore, he really knows very little about cavalry operations. Under the bright moonlight, the Black Army approached the enemy step by step. Both the spare horse and the heavy stale were left in place, and the horseshoe of the horses was also wrapped in cloth. Although the entire march process is not completely silent, it is definitely a secret and quiet. It seems to be an experienced old hunter, quietly approaching his prey. The moment the prey was noticed, perhaps, Legion had already shot in front of him. I do know how long it's a long time. Colin finally saw a little light in the distance. It was a bonfire that had never extinguished in the giant camp. Colin took a deep breath and clenched his sword in his hand. At this moment, Marquis' military order came again. The whole army rests. At this point, it was the darkest time before dawn. The whole black troops hidden themselves completely in this darkness, waiting quietly at the moment when the sun rose. The moment the killing starts. This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Logo Busroot. Chapter 48. Chapter 48 Railway. When the first ray of the sun was sprinkled on this ice field, the snow suddenly stopped. Colin, who was sleeping, felt that someone beside him was pushing himself. "What's wrong? Are you going to start playing?" Colin was awake. "Right." Earl Musin next to him looked resolute and looked ahead. At the same time, the commander ran back and forth in the military formation, conveying the marksman's military order. The whole army is on the horse, ready to fight. With this order, the black cavalry gradually woke up. The soldiers began to check the armor, horses, and weapons, and then turned around under the urging of the officers and set off the formation. As the sky is getting brighter, a row of arranged cavalry has been neatly arranged on the ice field. The breath of killing began to be transmitted in the military array, and a pale eye slowly appeared in the eyes. All fatigue and cold are disappeared at this moment. The rest is only the bloody blood, and the violent emotions that are unsightly. In the middle, Colin was involuntarily infected by this atmosphere, his breathing gradually became heavy, and reason has gradually faded at this moment. One of the most primitive and bloody impulses is rooted in all biological blood veins. At this moment, he suddenly understood what was the real tiger and wolf teacher, invincible division. The opposite giant camps are still quiet. They don't know at all that the sickle of death has quietly come, and they are almost reaching their neck. In the Black Army, everyone's eyes turned to the place where the Black Lion banner was located. Watching the man under the banner. As in the past countless times, there was no exciting pre-war speech, and I saw Marquis in Garcia slowly pull out the saber on the waist, raised his head high, and suddenly pointed out. Instantly, the low sound of the low horn sounded. Woo dash. The army began to surge forward. First, run slowly, then gradually accelerate, and finally enters the galaxy at a suitable distance. As the North, it can even be said to be the most elite cavalry of the glorious empire. This battle rhythm has been completely integrated into the blood of each black true warrior, and even the commander no longer needs too much command. The rumbling horseshoe echoed on the ice field, and finally became the only sound in heaven and earth. At this time, the troll was finally alarmed. But most of the giants have not even woke up from sleep. Even if you wake up, you haven't had time to eat breakfast, let alone weapons and armor. Numerous giants ran out of the camps in a panic, roaring in their mouths, and asked what happened with the same face. The commander of this wolf cavalry, General Quick, also woke up from his dream, and immediately realized that the situation was wrong. As soon as he rushed out of the camp, he saw a guard rushed over with his face. "General, it's not good, enemies, the enemy is killed." Quick rolled the guard, and then jumped to his back of his wolf riding, looking at the sound of the sound. Then his eyes widened to the extreme, almost cracking. Because he found that many cavalry, were killing them. Quick's first reaction is impossible. He has been led for so many years, and he has never let so many cavalry rush to such a close distance. Such weird things have almost subverted his cognition. But the next moment, Quick threw all the incredible aspects. Because he had seen the Black Lion banner that was greeted by the wind. The Black Army. For a moment, the blood of Quick's whole body was solidified. He suddenly calmed down. As if at this moment, the leader of the wolf cavalry had foreseen the fate that he could not escape. The light in his eyes also disappeared completely, leaving only the deepness of death. Quick immediately grabbed the guard's collar and shouted in a low voice. "Now you immediately lead a team of wolves to ride to the southwest, run all the way, don't look back. In any case, you must notify His Royal Highness Okaya, the Black Cavalry came over. Then General you." The guard is still hesitating, but Quick has pushed him out. Roll me." Subsequently, Quick pulled out his machete and rushed in the direction of the Black Cavalry. The desolate horn finally rang from the giant's camp. In such a voice, as the most elite fighters among the tribe, although these wolf cavalry were caught off guard, they were quickly organized under the leadership of Quick to prepare to welcome the upcoming battle. But it's late. The wolf cavalry was too late to accelerate, and found that the head striker had spanned this non-far away distance and rushed to themselves. The murderous human cavalry raised the steel knife obliquely, under the shining of the early morning sun, like a surging silver wave. Then, this turbulent wave rushed to the giant's camp instantly, bringing the blood sprayed from the sky and the broken legs that danced around. Quick shouted exhaustedly, trying to maintain a loose formation, so as not to let it be completely broken. At the same time, he also gathered a group of wolf cavalry to run in the direction of away from the Black Army. This is not running away. When I saw the Black Lion banner, Quick was ready to die. In the hands of the Marquis of Garcia, Quick did not feel humiliated, but was a little honored. But he still regrets. Because he felt that he was not ready. Even if he lost, he hoped to play the most powerful offensive and let the Marquis of Garcia know that he was great. He understands that the most important thing is speed. The speed requires distance. Therefore, he intends to run in the opposite direction. After pulling away a certain distance, he waits for the opportunity to rush over. This is indeed the most wise move. But unfortunately, the Black Army will not give him this opportunity. In this battle, the giant wolf cavalry was destined to be extremely aggrieved. Their number is actually more than the Black Army, but they have lost their opportunity. The banner in Quick's hand was constantly shaking, and the conspicuous armor on his body was soon stared at by the Black Army. The speed of his running back is not slow, but in the face of the Black Cavalry, who has already entered a state of rapid charge, is still slow and terrible. A team of Black Army came instantly and surrounded Quick. The turbulent swords whistled, and did not talk about fair duel at all. This is the battlefield where you die. The Knight spirit has no room for survival here. As a fifth-order warrior, Quick is also a well-known master of the tribe. But no matter how powerful the masters can't hold the army besiege. What's more, there are also many high-level knights in the Black Army. After creating a terrorist record to kill hundreds of people, the leader of the Wolf Cavalry was eventually cut off by a human knight. With the break of Quick's handsome flag, the giant demon cavalry collapsed completely. The Black Riding Army passed by, leaving the corpse on the ground and the blood flowing around. This is a downright slaughter. This chapter is finished. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Original Vampire. Author, Logo Busroot. Chapter 49. Chapter 49. The sun is like blood. The killing all day was finally calmed down at this moment. At this time, this wolf cavalry camp has become a real cemetery. There are dense black spots in the sky, which is the vulture attracted by the bloody smell. Wherever there are deaths, there are their figures. Of course, the Black Army also had casualties. However, the corpses of these killed soldiers could not be thrown away from the beasts like the giant corpse, but they were all concentrated and burned. When I saw the corpse of a high-end knight swallowed by the high fire, Khalil couldn't add it with heartache. Such a waste. But no matter how drooling Colin, he dared not to blame the robe's body in front of the Black Army. He did not give up, and found the Count Dowson and made a request for the buried generals. Earl Dawn rolled his eyes and left a sentence, "Would you like to dig a pit on this icefield first?" Colin really tried. Then he was tired. The frozen soil here is too difficult to dig. No wonder the Black Cavalry chooses cremation. In desperation, Colin couldn't continue to entangle and had to give up. After cleaning the battlefield, the results of this battle also had preliminary statistics, and the giants left more than 30,000 corpses here. Of course, there are more wolf cavalry escape while chaotic. Therefore, the battle has not been completely ended. Next, the bloody and brutal chase. At this time, the handsome account of the troll had become a temporary command post in the Black Army. Garcia's equal Jaws made a combat command in an expression without expression. Under his command, the Black Army seemed to be as if a precise mechanical octopus, and he was extending to open the tentacles, tightly wrapped the wolf cavalry who tried to escape until they would get them, until they will take them, until they will get 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 them. All hanging. Colin shrank in the corner, observed carefully, and learned. This is a rare opportunity. Although I don't understand why the Marquis of Garcia allows him to observe and learn unscrupulously like an outsider who does not belong to the Black Army, Colin will not feel embarrassed. Not everyone can have such an opportunity to have the art of learning war with the best generals in the world. Finally, the military order was completed. One by one, the generals of the Black Army walked out of the camp silently. No question, nor did he oppose. This army has become accustomed to obeying Marquis in Garcia. Because as long as you absolutely obey, you can win one after another. Try it repeatedly. The prestige is established like this. When a coach can continue to lead his men to win one after another, then he is the god in the hearts of the soldiers. In fact, this is why the famous generals are always the root cause of the monarch. In the special group of the army, everything speaks. Even if the monarch is nominal, if the soldiers cannot lead to victory, his order will not be implemented at all. The reason is simple. These soldiers do not understand politics or even loyalty, but they understand a simple truth: defeating the battle will die. Moreover, it is likely to die. Therefore, in order to survive, you must win. If the rebellion can win, they will not hesitate to follow the coach to rebel. Colin had a whole armor and moved his bones. Of course he did not get any military orders, after all, he was an outsider. In addition to him, there is actually another outsider, Vera. The female mage had just fell asleep, and she was very cute. But she couldn't blame her. After all, she was called at midnight last night. Today is another nervous killing all day. She didn't understand the military meeting just now, and she would inevitably start to doze off. Hey, wake up! Colin got together and stabbed Willow with his elbow. Ah, what's wrong? Vera looked up confusedly and saw Colin's narrow smile, and suddenly made a red face. The Marquis over there is still whispering with the Count of Taoist, and it seems that he did not pay attention to the small movements of these two outsiders. Is this battle over? Wyra glanced at his uncle. Seeing that he didn't notice himself, he sighed quietly. It is not completely over. Next, we have to chase the scattered wolf cavalry, and we must not let them reorganize, let alone let them meet the main force in the southwest direction. Oh, Vera frowned slightly, but soon became resolute again, and nothing complained. To be honest, the Duke's adoptive daughter is indeed persistent, and there is no fault to raise. The mage's body was weak, but she still insisted that she could not drop the team, which was really valuable. Vera. Marquis Garcia looked over and said softly. Okay. Wyra understood. Uncle was considerate of herself and agreed obediently. Subsequently, Marquis Garcia looked at the Colin Knight. Are you going to follow me or follow the Count Dowson? Colin immediately straightened his chest. I am willing to follow you. Although it is safer to stay behind, and can cultivate feelings with Vera, how can Colin distinguish the severity? How can he give up such a good learning opportunity? At this time, the Marquis of Garcia is more attractive than Villara. Okay. Marquis Garcia nodded and strode out of the camp. Colin quickly followed. Although the Black Army set off the Tianluo network to prevent the wolf cavalry from meeting with the main force of the trolls, it is obviously impossible to have no leakage fish at all on this ice field. Most of the wolf cavalry remnants of the Black Cavalry were dismissed in the opposite direction, but there were still a few wolf cavalry break through the heavily enclosure of the Black Army and merged with the main force of the troll. As a result, the news of soldiers finally came here. In the handsome troops, the atmosphere was depressed and dignified. The tall man sitting on the main position was a little stunned at this time. His name is Gangbek Waljan, the prince of the southern prince of the David Empire. The giants' rule is very similar to humans. This is actually the result of their hard work after being defeated by the glorious empire. The highest rulers are the giant emperor, Murdolf Folken, and the four princes of the east, south, west, and north. The status is similar to the Duke of the Glory Empire. Among them, the southern prince is the four kings in terms of prestige and strength. The reason is simple. The south of the giant demon empire is the north. This direction is not only the biggest threat of the giant demon empire, but also the ancestral land of their dreams. In the south of the sky, if there is no certain strength, you will have received the box lunch. Therefore, when fighting with the northern border, unless the Emperor's own driving, he was the southern prince as the highest commander. Of course this time is no exception. Gamey Waljan, the number 2 figure of the giant demon empire, is also the old acquaintance of the Marquis of Garcia. For more than 10 years, Gambred had basically never won. But even so, his reputation in the Demon Empire is increasing day by day. The reason why there is such a weird situation is that although Okabik has been losing, he has lost the most beautiful, and sometimes he can even play with the Marquis of Garcia. And the generals of the other giants, as long as they encounter the Black Army, are all lost. Therefore, the dwarf is tall, and Gamey Walken has become the only troll general who can confront the Marquis of Garcia. This time, while the Marquis of Garcia was transferred out of the front line, Prince Gambak finally raised his eyebrows and vomited, and he announced to the world with a victory. It's not that he can't do it, but the Marquis of Garcia is too abnormal. Don't believe you, once the Marquis of Garcia is gone, no one is his opponent. But I did not expect that the Marquis of Garcia was back again. Moreover, this kind of silent way is to give yourself so hard. Prince Gambak was stunned for a long time before finally opening. His hoarse voice echoed in the handsome account, "Talk about it now, what should I do now? However, you look at me by the giants in the account, I look at you, silently." The audience was dead. This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Logo Busroot. Chapter 50. Chapter 50. The noon sun shines on the sky ice field, bringing a little warmth. But the soldiers of this giant army only felt the cold. I don't know when it started. The figure of a team of black troops appeared around the army, looking at them from a distance, as if staring at their prey. Compared with more than 200,000 trunches, the whistle of these black army seemed to be an ant at the foot of the elephant. It was weak and inconspicuous. However, what is really nervous is the bloated elephant of the giant devil. The army that had passed more than 200,000 victory was inevitably dispersed on the long march, especially the post troops responsible for transportation and plunder, and they could not see the former army. However, when the main force of the wolf cavalry swarming near the army was returned by the black army attack, the fishermen who seemed to be shocked in the group began to hold the group instantly. Moreover, under the order of Prince Gangbek in the south, more than 50,000 human slaves snatched from the north were directly abandoned on the ice field. That's right, the shadow of the Black Army's main force has not seen it, and the troll took the initiative to spit out the food in the stomach. Prince Gambak knew that these human slaves would only be the burden of the army, and it was better to throw away. As for whether these 50,000 lack of clothes and less human slaves will freeze to death on the ice field, it is not something he cares about. If the Black Cavalry receives these 50,000 human slaves, maybe Prince Gosabik will wake up with a dream. The Black Cavalier's whistle did discover the 50,000 abandoned human slaves, but when they passed the news to the Marquis of Garcia, the Marquis did not hesitate and chose to ignore it directly. Cold blood and ruthlessness, but it is a decision that coach should have. The Black Riding Army is light-fitting, and there are not many grain and grass. If these human slaves are received, the result is that everyone starved to death together on the ice field. At this moment, the Black Army has not had time to rely on the main force of the giant demon, and they are still chasing the crosses of the wolf cavalry they have defeated before. The strategic goal of the Marquis of Garcia is very clear, that is, to completely wipe out the wolf cavalry, kill the enemy's only resistance, and then slowly bleed the main force of the troll. The pursuit of the wolf cavalry disposal lasted for 5 days and 5 nights. The Black Army preliminary statistics, including the battle in the camp, was killed in total of about 70,000 wolf cavalry. Yes, only killing, no captives. When he learned that the troll army abandoned human slavery, the Marquis of Garcia ordered that he would not accept any troll captives. At this point, this wolf cavalry has completely lost its combat effectiveness, and the remaining sporadic deserters can no longer pose any threat. The Marquis of Garcia also started to gather the Black Army, and after a little rest, he began to approach the position of the giant army. The final end of this battle officially started. The Truna, who was slowly moving forward, suddenly discovered that the black troops who had always followed the bones that had been followed by the bones had suddenly disappeared. This made the troll soldiers confused. But Prince Gambak immediately became nervous, because he understood that the disappearance of the whistle could only explain one thing. The main force of the Black Army has arrived. Sure enough, the snow on the ice field suddenly trembled, and the sound of the horseshoe was faintly heard. The trolls looked around and found out that a black cavalry force was struck from all directions. Woo dash! The vast horn sounded immediately, and after a brief chaos, the Trunzer began to meet the enemy. However, panic still spreads in the giant devil. Even if they are the best ones. That black lion flag seemed to have some kind of heart-made magic. Whenever it appeared over the sky ice field, it would bring a great sense of oppression to the giants. The Black Corps came quickly. With the sound of stuffy horseshoe, more than a dozen cavalry teams were surrounded by the trunches in all directions. The number of each black cavalry team is about 1,000, with a total of less than 20,000. Compared with the giant devils with a number of more than 200,000 people, it really shakes the tree. But looking at the aggressive posture of this black ride, as if they were the master of this battlefield. Nearly, the Black Club cavalry immediately turned around and passed the side-wide wings of the troll. They bent the bow and arrow, and then the buzzing sound of the bowstring sounded. The dark arrow rain seemed to cover the locusts that covered the sky, poured into the giant demon army. Don't panic, raise the shield. Archers prepare, spear hands are prepared. Don't move, don't retreat, keep the formation. Nympho. The sound of the military commands continued to sound in the giant devil's array, and it was instantly drowned in the sound of the horseshoe. The arrow fell like a rainstorm and hit the shield. However, there were also sounds of arrows that kept the meat, and the arrows fell to the ground among the giant devil soldiers, and the sorrow immediately spread in the formation. No kindness, no hesitation. The most rude and coolest way for black riding military, the prelude to this battle was simply kicked off. At this time, the giant army has already shrunk into a round turtle shell, and that black knitting army seems to be a round line. Arrow. After the 20,000 cavalry passed by, a clear line of the giant army arrays made a clear line, which seemed to be a wheat field blowing through the wind, leaving only countless corpses and crying wounded. However, the giant is by no means no counterattack. After the archers and spears in the military array supported the first wave of the first wave, they calmed down. Under the command of the officer, they began to shoot the bow and arrow towards the black army and throw a spear. For a time, the arrows and spears flying and forth in the sky continued to harvest the lives of human and giant devils. However, the black army is an absolute advantage of mobility after all. They were scattered in the counterattack of the trolls and opened their distances, like wolves, and patrol around the trips. Once the gap flaws are found, they will immediately rush up to bite, and react to the trolls, and before the defense and counterattack, rely on the interests of the war horses to quickly go away, and no longer give the giants a chance to counterattack. This textbook-like cavalry assault war continued for a whole morning. When the more than a dozen black cavalry was withdrawn, the trolls finally breathed a breath. In fact, the casualties caused by this huge army. However, this huge psychological pressure makes every giant generals exhausted. As soon as the black cavalry left, they immediately camped on the spot, began to cook, and licked the wound. However, before eating, before he had time to narrow a noon, the giants suddenly discovered that the black army appeared again in all directions. Almost in the morning, the black army was divided into more than a dozen cavalry teams, with about 1,000 people, and once again rushed to the giant army. And those giants who are familiar with the black army also found that the batch of black Trojans in the afternoon was obviously not the morning. This is to engage in wheels. This chapter is finished.